Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have got to talk about Supergirl, or Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow if we are being official. This is the second major theatrical release in the DC Universe reboot since James Gunn took over the reins, and it is supposed to open a brand new chapter for the Superman family. Now, if you remember, Supergirl made a brief cameo at the end of last year's Superman, so she is finally stepping into the spotlight as the lead here, and with Superman returning the favor this time around for a quick guest appearance. Well, lately, we have all seen Marvel get bogged down by overcrowding their movies with an endless roster of heroes. Gunn noticeably tries to rein that in here. The DCU presence is kept pretty lean. They really only introduce Lobo, in what looks like an effort to keep the focus firmly on character development. But here is the problem. By choosing to adapt the Woman of Tomorrow comic miniseries, they introduce this young girl, Ruthye. Her role creates this massive narrative overlap that completely robs our main heroine of significant screen time. Well, honestly, as the movie goes on, it gets frustratingly difficult to keep your eyes focused on Supergirl herself. So, Gunn's primary goal here was clearly to reinvent who Supergirl is. Forget the cheerful, wholesome, sunshine girl persona we have seen in past live action versions. This time, she is a deeply conflicted character, carrying the heavy trauma of losing her entire home planet while living as an absolute outsider. The opening act shows her encamped, drinking heavily, and sporting a really coarse personality. While I actually thought this gritty, decadent reinvention felt incredibly fresh at first. But unfortunately, whether the studio cut out too much footage or the pacing just derailed, her psychological evolution completely falls apart by the second act. She abruptly shoulders the responsibility of protecting Ruthye, transforming overnight from a scared vagabond into this mature, reliable mentor. By the time she delivers her final monologue urging Ruthye to let go of her vengeance, well, it feels entirely unearned. There just wasn't enough emotional setup to make it convincing, at least for me. We are all used to modern superhero blockbusters pushing past the 2.5 hour mark, but Supergirl clocks in at a remarkably brief 100 minutes. Well, because of that, a lot of the plot feels incredibly superficial. The entire second half of the movie degenerates into these fragmented sequences that practically scream a ton of footage was left on the cutting room floor. Structurally, it is exactly what a lot of viewers have been pointing out. The narrative is a transparent copy of the Hollywood Western classic, True Grit. Whether you're looking at the 1969 John Wayne original or the Coen brothers' 2010 remake, the premise is identical. So it's about a young girl whose family is murdered, recruits a formidable fighter to escort her on a path of vengeance. To build out the surrounding world, the production just defaults to James Gunn's signature Guardians of the Galaxy space opera aesthetic and seasons it with a little bit of Mad Max production design. So, one of the main reasons the critical reception has missed the mark is that the film feels way too much like a Guardians movie and not nearly enough like a Superman film. Traditionally, Superman projects operate as a high-flying crowd pleasers. Audiences want that visceral satisfaction of watching an invincible hero dismantle evil with absolute power. Yet, Supergirl, much like last year's Superman, spends a massive portion of its runtime stripping the protagonist of her powers, forcing her into a perpetual underdog position. The actual high-octane action beats are few and far between. While the kinetic execution is decent, the choreography lacks any distinct flair, so it is tough to get truly invested. Ironically, the film's most poignant moments are the ones exploring Supergirl's profound isolation, like her initial arrival on Earth, her encounter with Superman, and her quiet loneliness amid a bustling metropolis. Had this psychological alienation remained the central anchor of the film, DC fans would likely have been far more engaged, but instead, the production retreated into a familiar comfort zone of Guardian-style cosmic adventures. But without Gunn himself in the director's chair, audiences just aren't buying it. Well, ultimately, the film's fatal flaw lies in the character of Ruthye. Now, the issue isn't that she is unlikable or that the actress did a bad job. On the contrary, I think she is far too prominent and completely steals the show. The true driving force of the narrative is Ruthie's personal quest for vengeance. From the opening frames right through the midpoint, the audience tracks the world through her eyes, which effectively demotes Supergirl to a supporting character. By the time the credits roll, it is Ruthie who achieves a complete act of personal growth, but not Supergirl. So for a standalone superhero movie, that is a bizarrely invented narrative structure. And a more traditional, cohesive approach would have cut the Ruthie storyline entirely. Well, they could have started directly with Supergirl escaping the destruction of Krypton, like exploring her struggle to assimilate on Earth, and utilizing Superman as her primary mentor. I guess that would have delivered a much tighter, more satisfying character arc. By forcing two young heroines to share a parallel path, well, the film seems to completely muddy its narrative priorities and actively dilutes Supergirl's individual charisma. So, on a technical level, despite the change in director, the overarching art direction and visual style remains heavily indebted to Guardians of the Galaxy. Like from the alien creature designs and cosmic tech to the costuming, you could pull random frames from this movie and easily convince someone they were looking at a new Marvel installment rather than the rebooted DCU. The action sequences deliver standard genre thrills, but they offer very little in the way of innovation. So instead, it is the introduction of Lobo that commands the screen. Jason Momoa is impeccably cast here. Well, I think we all know that it is an open secret that when he originally joined the DC Extended Universe years ago, Lobo was the character he actually campaigned to play before they cast him as Aquaman. Now that he is finally getting his wish, Momoa embodies the bounty hunter's comic book look and swagger with absolute precision. But unfortunately, Lobo functions like a ghost in the machine, popping in and out of the narrative with virtually zero meaningful interaction with Supergirl before exiting the stage. His inclusion feels like a mandatory corporate placeholder while designed to tease future spin-offs. Audiences unfamiliar with DC lore will likely walk out of the theater wondering who he was even supposed to be. The main antagonist, Krem, represents another massive narrative failure. His visual design, character motivations, and dramatic execution stray drastically from the source material. He possesses zero screen presence, initially appearing as nothing more than a generic mid-level henchman, and his final confrontation lacks any real gravitas or memorability. As for the new actress portraying Supergirl, while her physical appearance might not match the highly stylized aesthetics of previous live-action iterations, her performance is perfectly competent. The core issues plaguing the character belong strictly to the writing, not the actress. So there is really no reason to fault her performance. To wrap it up, Supergirl functions as a fast-paced, moderately entertaining space western, but it suffers from a script that severely sidelines its own hero. Neither the protagonist nor the supporting cast are given the room to establish genuine cinematic charm. Look, I wasn't a particular fan of the Zack Snyder era of DC films, and James Gunn's Superman reboot last year actually exceeded my expectations. But Supergirl is really an undeniable disappointment. It forces a complete re-evaluation of my expectations for the future of this new DC universe. Okay, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Did Ruthye take over the movie for you too? Okay, catch you in the next episode.